Streaming. Yeah. Okay, so welcome everybody. I am now opening our council meeting for the day. Welcome to everyone online watching the YouTube stream and to everyone that's in the room today, including some public forum. So I'll begin with our karakia. Tue ki runga, tue ki raro, tue ki waho, tue ki roto, tue ki te here tangara. Ka rongo te pō, ka rongo te ao, o me hui taiki e. Thanks everyone. So apologies. We have just the one from Councillor Tim Meetham. He has been called up to jury duty. So I can move that. Somebody care to second? Yep. Councillor Wilson, all in favour. Aye. Against, carried. Welcome to Public Forum, and the first speaker today will be Pierre. Pierre will be followed by Elizabeth Soul. Welcome, Pierre.
Kia ora koutou. Globally, March was the second warmest month of March ever recorded. As a consequence, we have seen record fires in Japan, record fires in Korea, fires in Scotland, floods in Queensland that killed 100,000 farm animals, which will increase the price of meat here too, and historic floods and storms in the US. This latest disaster should be a cautionary tale for anyone tempted to follow the Americans' footsteps. Electing a climate change denier and leaving the Paris Agreement won't protect you from the impacts of climate change. Only concerted mitigation efforts will. So where is this all heading? According to Gunther Tallinger from Allianz, one of the world's largest insurance companies, it is leading us to the collapse of a financial system. It is pretty easy to understand why. Our financial system is based on the ability for people and organizations to borrow money. But if projects become uninsurable, no one will finance them. You will know that buildings are already becoming uninsurable in low-lying coastal areas, in flood zones, or in fire-prone areas. But the uninsurability of assets will soon, if nothing changes, become generalized. And when this happens, the entire financial system will collapse as no one will be able to lend you money anymore. This is where climate change is bringing our economy. But an even more important pillar of our civilization that we seem to completely disregard is water. On average, a human being can only survive about 3 days without water, and without water, we can't grow food either. Yet we seem determined to waste and pollute our fresh water as if it was worthless and endless. It is not. A recent report from the United Nations shows that the water supply of 2 billion people is at risk from our melting glaciers. But even simply drier conditions are also making agriculture much more difficult. This year, the Japanese government released 200,000 tons of rice from the emergency rice stockpile because rice needs a lot of water to grow, and exceptionally hot summers have caused very poor yields, exacerbating the inflation of rice prices in Japan. And if hearing bad news makes you crave chocolate or a coffee to pick you up, be warned, last year alone, cocoa and coffee prices have also more than doubled because of our increasingly extreme weather patterns. To get back to our water problems, it is time that we stop taking for granted this essential element of life. And we cannot accept anymore systemic carelessness and systemic underinvestment as we are witnessing in Queenstown. QLDC has known for years that not only the treatment plant was underperforming, but also that it wouldn't cope with the growth in population. Yet, instead of making the necessary upgrades to the plant a priority, they have waited to reach breaking point and are now simply pouring 12 million liters of not fully treated sewage water into our rivers every day. It is the role of the ORC to make sure that consent holders comply with their consent conditions. And we expect that you will take every necessary measures to force QLDC to take this issue seriously, to make it a priority to clean up the disposal field and to reopen it with netting while working urgently on a more long-term solution. Water is precious, and we better make it a priority to protect our freshwater resources, as our heating climate will make clean fresh water increasingly scarce. Thank you.
Thank you, Pierre. Are there any questions today? No? Well, nice to see you in person today, Pierre, and thank you very much for your message to us once again, and as always, very well researched and carefully put together. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome to Elizabeth Soul.
You want to take a seat to my left, Peter?
Just get Elizabeth's presentation up and running. And then I'll allow you, Elizabeth, to just to expand on who you're representing today. Thanks.
Okay, we just a bit bigger. And sorry. Reach that, okay. Yep. Yep, you can push the button and stuff. Kia ora koutou. Thank you very much for having me come and speak to you today. I've got to look quite a
Just press the right hand button on your mic. Hopefully, and maybe need Andrew's help getting the mics working. No, Lloyd.
Yes.
Yep. Oh, there we go.
Is it working now?
Yeah.
So I've got quite a bit to pack into 5 minutes. So I've also got some written information to provide you as well. What I'm speaking to you about today is an item on your agenda for decision making, which is around the proposed Section 35 effectiveness and efficiency.
Mic has gone off. Might be just a battery issue with that.
Okay.
Sorry, Elizabeth.
It's like a White House press conference.
Yeah.
So yes, so talking about the Section 35 effectiveness and efficiency review proposed for the Waitaki catchment. By way of background, I know some of you I don't know. I'm a consultant based out of Oamaru in the Waitaki, but I am here today speaking on behalf of the Waitaki Irrigators Collective, which is an organisation comprised of the irrigation schemes and independent irrigators in the Waitaki catchment in both North Otago and South Canterbury. Previously worked for Irrigation New Zealand, and I also provide allocation and resource management advice to other organisations and companies across New Zealand, the United States, and also the New Zealand government as well. So by way of background, the Waitaki Irrigators Collective is really concerned about the potential ramifications of undertaking such a review of the Waitaki. We think that it's got significant implications and risks associated with it, particularly to the planning framework that's been in place for the lower river and the wider catchment as a whole for some time, which has been working really effectively. So planning and water management in the Waitaki has been fraught and challenging for over 20 years. It is the most significant catchment in New Zealand for hydro and irrigation values, and it's also really important for biodiversity values, recreation, cultural values, and tourism. Around 20 years ago, there was a ministerial call-in for all consents in the catchment, and that was based off of the Meridian Energy application for the Project Aqua scheme. An Act of Parliament was then passed for the amendment of the RMA for the Waitaki Act, as it's become known, which set up an allocation board and said that there must be an allocation plan in place for the Waitaki catchment. That Act is still in place now. There was a year of submissions and hearings done by the allocation board, and it led to the Waitaki Catchment Water Allocation Regional Plan. Unfortunately, significant parts of that plan couldn't be implemented because the planning framework didn't meet the consented environment. So after years of work, there were 3 significant plan changes to the allocation plan, plan changes 1, 2, and 3. Plan Change 1 affected the operating range of Lake Pukaki. Plan Change 2 was a voluntary process that was commenced by the irrigators in the Maita Whenua catchment to end over allocation there, and it involved them voluntarily returning water to the river. And then the big one was Plan Change 3, which provided a new allocation and environmental flow regime for the lower river. This was a hard-won collaborative process that took many years between Meridian Energy, Te Runanga o Ngāi Tahu, Environment Canterbury and the irrigators as well. The process for developing Plan Change 3 was based on principles of giving and gaining. For instance, the irrigators reduced their allocation by 11 cumecs, providing a 10 cumec allocation to mahinga kai activities and 1 cumec of allocation for enhancement of Wainono Lagoon in South Canterbury. So this was a significant plan change, and the allocation to mahinga kai of 10 cumecs is very significant. To put that into context, that's over double the average flow rate of the Kakanui River. And it was then followed by one of the largest consent review processes ever undertaken, I believe, in New Zealand. But there was not a single objection lodged to about 80 consents that had to be reviewed to align it with the new allocation framework. Having said all that, Plan Change 3 has really only been embedded since 2018 when the consents were reviewed. Meridian Energy's consents for the Waitaki Hydro project are currently in process. They've been directly referred to the Environment Court, and that mediation process is happening as we speak. So this is the first time that the allocation framework has been tested. There haven't really been any other consents that have been tested against the new framework. So it hasn't really had much of a chance to bed in that regard. Stakeholders need a clear understanding of why a review of the Waitaki catchment planning and management framework is needed. We don't understand what requires fixing. We do understand that the planning framework is complex, but that is the case in many other catchments as well. We're not sure whether the councils, both you and Environment Canterbury, realise what is at stake if such a review is undertaken, whether all the hard-won collaborative gains that the entire community have achieved would be put on the table and therefore would be at risk. Also, the government, as you know, has recently signalled changes that will be coming to the RMA, in fact, to replace it entirely, and that will entirely change the landscape of regional planning too. So how is this a good investment of resources now to undertake a statutory review of planning for the catchment? Just finish with saying that the catchment is in good health in terms of the planning framework that is in place. We worked hard to get a collaborative outcome that provided for all stakeholders and also the health and well-being of the awa itself, which is perhaps the most important thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Malcolm, you're wanting a question?
No, I'm just looking over there.
Yep, Councillor No.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I assume that someone from the irrigator spoke to the Environment Canterbury when they considered the same issue not that long ago, perhaps late March.
Yes, so we didn't do a presentation like this at the forum, but we held multiple meetings with councillors and staff in the lead up to their vote for the Section 35 review as well.
And my other question was just, if I may, Madam Chair, with regards to Section 35, it's an information gathering exercise, but do you see that, well, it seems to me by the way your submission points indicate that there is a concern that this will trigger a risk to the current arrangement under the regime that you've just talked about that's taken 20 years to get in play with a lot of toing and froing and consenting and concessions.
Correct, and we're unclear as to what the potential gains of that would be because we're unsure what it is exactly that's being investigated and why it's required.
Thank you.
Councillor Wilson, then Malcolm.
Thank you for a very succinct presentation of the facts, because that's really helpful context. But I just want to check in your understanding of the RMA processes. You're very, very experienced, obviously. Section 35 can be a very narrow, almost litigious process, or it can be fairly wide, generic, depending on how it is done, I presume. The the Act gives a minimum, it doesn't say, it doesn't limit the process to those minimum processes, does it?
I don't believe so, no.
Yeah, so, and totally appreciating you saying, don't do it now, we don't need it, and it'd be difficult. If it were to be carried out, are there any things that we should be adding or ensuring happens in that broader potential process that could assist our understanding? Because that's the problem sometimes, is we miss out because we just go down a very narrow path.
Yeah, and I guess that's one of the issues that we're concerned about with starting down a statutory pathway, puts you on a statutory pathway.
Yeah.
And perhaps there might be other ways to investigate. And like I say, we are unclear what the problems are that are needing to be addressed. Understand that there's concerns about holistic catchment management, but we really want to know what that means. And perhaps there are other ways of examining these issues outside of a statutory process, like I say, which sets one down a statutory path.
So, and just in my mind, there's usually a 10-year timeframe for plans to be reviewed.
Yep.
While this has been embedded since 2018, and I presume that kicked off with a statutory or an enforcement order, or not an enforcement order, sorry, a environment court something. What date is on that? And is it a 10-year from that date?
So it may have been 2016 from memory.
Okay.
And I guess, yes, the RMA requires a 10-year review, but there are many, many plans
I think we're very aware of that.
overdue, if
Yes.
I could put it that way.
And this wouldn't necessarily be the one that needed testing first. Thank you.
Councillor Malcolm.
Yeah, thanks for your presentation, Liz. Look, just wanted to clarify a couple of wee things. So, and I know you didn't say these, one of these figures, but I'm just checking that I'm within the ballpark. So the original plans that were promulgated right at the very start of this process, about 20 years, had something, I understand, around about 5,000 to 5,500 submissions to them.
That would be right, yeah.
And then when we get to after sort of 12, 14 years of collaborative work with iwi, the generators, the water users, we had a plan that went through completely unopposed, and that was signed off by Arawhanua, Waihau and Muraki plus Otago.
Yeah, I mean, there were some submissions that had concerns about Plan Change 3 generally. Having said that, it went before the Environment Canterbury hearing commissioners, and there were no further objections after the decision of the commissioners came out. And as you rightly say, the plan change itself was supported by the irrigators, Meridian Energy, Genesis Energy, the three Papatipururanga, and Tront as an overarching organisation. And then, like I say, there was this massive consent review process to align all the consents with the new planning framework, and there was not a single objection lodged to that.
And two things to follow up from that. So now we are just seeing the start of the consents that were issued. Now the first tranche of them is just starting to be reviewed or reconsented.
Correct. So Meridian Energy's consents for the entire Waitaki hydro project is the first cab off the rank, if I can put it that way. And then the significant irrigation permits start expiring and requiring replacement in 2028. And then there's all the individual independent irrigators within that process as well. So we're right at the start of a major consenting process for the catchment.
Yeah, and sorry, just a further one to that, just a further understanding. So the plan change 3 was not just around allocation, it was also around environmental processes, nutrient loadings and the likes.
So there was a separate plan process because the allocation plan specifically relates to water quantity allocation. So the water quality in the catchment is determined by the Land and Water Regional Plan for Canterbury, which was done through the sub-regional zone committee process of the Land and Water Regional Plan.
Thank you.
Right, we seem to have quite a lot of questions, but we've come to the end of this one. So I'm going to allow one more, and it needs to be from someone that hasn't asked a question already. So
Can I move to extend? Can I move to extend the public forum, or can we do that or not?
Not sure.
Yeah,
At this
I
point, we
understand yours
usually do
again.
it beforehand.
Discussed.
Yeah. I think we'll just go with one more question. First person that had their hand up was actually councillor Ware, but yeah, sorry, councillor Callaghan.
Sorry, I was just wondering if you could elaborate on, it's just not entirely clear to me, what the perceived risks of the review process are in terms of, the progress to date, like how a review process would risk.
Like I said before, probably our concern is about setting it down a pathway, which will inevitably, to us, it's unclear how a review of the catchment planning, if you started a review process and then it was found that there were issues that needed to be addressed with the allocation plan, for instance, that opens everything up. Everything's put on the table in terms of what could be put on the table for consideration. And so, like I say, it's been a long, fraught process to get here. We're concerned that this is going to cost a lot of money, not just in terms of council resources, but also in terms of what that's going to mean for the community, who have invested a lot of blood, sweat and tears in this process, and potentially having to go through it all over again for what we don't know is the issue that's trying to be fixed and what the ultimate end goal is going to be. It's going to cost the community an awful lot for unclear gains.
Thank you. Big thanks for coming to
Thank you. So
public
I've got-
forum today. It's great always to have people coming along and speaking, and particularly in person. So thanks heaps for doing that.
Thank you.
We just need to, you've got some handouts as
Yep.
well, which is fine if you want to just give those forward here and we can hand those out.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right, so we can confirm the agenda. I'm not aware of any changes. A reminder on declarations of interest there. Is the action register there? Now there are some updates that are in there, but there's also some that need updating. But I guess this was an additional council meeting, so by the next council meeting they'll be updated, I understand. But if there's any questions based on actions, feel free to ask them. Doesn't appear to be, so we don't need to do anything with those. And we're on to the first paper, which is large scale environmental funding. Lily is the author of this paper and she's just coming forward for the team of presenters. Over to you, Libby.
Thank you. So this paper is following on from 2 workshops that have been held with councillors in October and February this financial year. We're seeking endorsement of the principles and the delivery models included in this paper to inform the preparation of the final report, which we'll present in May. This future paper will detail the process for establishing and administering the large-scale environmental fund. So we aren't seeking decisions on the model to be used at this point. We're just wanting to ensure that there's alignment so that the final report can support decision-making in May, and that it includes what is expected and has been discussed to date. So that's an overview. And I forgot to introduce Emma, who is from Frequency, and she's been helping and will helping with this project. I've met her before in the workshops, and she will be preparing that final report for presentation in May.
Very good. Any questions, I think, at this point? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. I've got 2 questions, and I understand the process and I've enjoyed working through the workshops, but I think that it's really big issues. One of the principles, the first question I've got is, we've also said as a principle we want to look at our regional pest management plan. And so if I took this at the moment, it has to align to our current strategies and directions, and I wanted to deal with, say, possums somewhere, it may not at the moment meet our regional pest management plan. And so I'm just checking, when we say these principal statements, it's how loose they can be, or because we know we're probably going to tighten up on that. I just want to check that we're not going to miss out on some opportunities because we rigorously tie ourselves to these principles.
Really good question. So what we would use in the first instance would be, I guess if it's adopted, is what we currently have.
Mhm.
So and it won't, if you're speaking specifically about possums, that wouldn't just be covered by the regional pest management plan. That could be covered by things like the biodiversity strategy, where there are outcomes we'd be looking for where possums could be a threat to those outcomes.
Right.
So I think when we look at those strategies and plans that we have and we connect them together, then that will cover that. And also through our integrated catchment management work, if the community bring that issue as a high priority up, then it can be considered that way.
That's great. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't making it
So
really
in
hard.
10 years,
Yeah.
if there's a new threat, how do we
Yeah.
pick that up? But and our criteria, we would look to evolve that over time. We'd have those overarching principles if it is adopted, where there's alignment to strategies and plans that we have, but over time that can change and our priorities can change, and that would be reflected every time we had the funding available again.
In fact, it could also include biosecurity directions.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And there. And the other one, and it's one that I know that I've raised, but I didn't feel comfortable had been reflected in the principles, and maybe I just have to say it's a loss on my part, is understanding the prioritisation of private, public, or even dock land, which is public land, but administered slightly differently than public land or TA land. And because the people contributing to this are ratepayers, and understanding sometimes they expect their taxpayer money is doing a job, and how that is seen across that. And maybe it's not a principal decision, but I know some people would think that's the role of DOC. DOC should be doing that job, and if they're not, we shouldn't be subsidising them. It's a government issue. So how are we going to nuance that, and should it be on QE2 land or just straight private land? Or
So it's not covered in the principles, but it could be covered in criteria that we have which relate to the funding streams as they're set up. And then at that time, it would need to be decided whether we include public land or not.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Can I just reflect the because I remember this discussion, Kate, is that, and I think where the table got to is that there are times when everything on balance, there may still choose to be an investment in an area that may be the responsibility of another party because of the outcomes that it would achieve. So it was leaving the door open, which is why it wasn't a clear principle, but it was acknowledged that, we don't want to be stepping in everywhere because then, this is just on us to carry on. But there might be occasions where it is value in terms of the outcomes we're achieving. So I think that was the conversation that we had at the time, was not to close the door to it, but be aware of it in terms of what our responsibilities are.
Thank you.
Councillor Sunwell.
The hybrid model that's described in paragraph 14A there, how does that relate to the models you took us through in the February workshop?
Yes, so that relates to the discussion we had through the 6 models and that endpoint we got to of identifying a couple that were probably not fit for future investigation, and looking at the more kind of structured procurement model that might be a direct contracting or an ROI or an EOI type process, looking at that as a hybrid with the element of prioritisation or looking at how implementation of the CAP could be used. So that was those two models, looking at those together.
Yes, thank you. I thought that's the case, and I thought I'd better just check I've got that right. That's great. Thank you.
No further question. Councillor Callaghan.
The one concern that I've had, the most key concern to me all through this, is that as we get into very large sums of money, which is what this is unprecedented for ORC, and as we look to pick and choose the projects and what we will fund, that we end up becoming the long-term funder of an activity that at the end of the term, those people are back to us saying we are 50% through, it hasn't gone to plan. We need to continue this. And suddenly it almost becomes an ongoing funded activity of the council and the ratepayers for basically ever. How do we ensure that that doesn't happen?
Yeah, that's a really good point, and something that you'll see. We talked about through those strengths and opportunities and challenges on the models, and we did in the workshop, but that will come through quite clearly in the report, is in terms of some of those risks and challenges that need to be managed. Because the reality is, under any model that you would use, there's a risk of setting up that intention or that expectation that happens. So in the report, there will be more detail around the opportunities around how if you went with that model, how it would be governed and how you would manage it on a day-to-day basis, and the things that you would need to put in place to safeguard the council, I guess, and the expectation or grow the capability of the organisations that you were working with to prepare them for the fact that after a certain period of time, and it might be a longer period than is currently available through your grant-making type activities such as the Eco Fund, but how you evolve that process over time. That will all be in the report.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
This is a pedantry question, possibly for the CE, but I'm just nervous with the recommendations, and well, I'm not actually nervous with the intent of the recommendations. It's just putting the 2 million in there, noting that in the financial consideration section, we're still going to be confirming that at annual plan, and whether we can leave the 2 million out for the purposes of this resolution and just put large scale environmental fund. Because that will be something we have said we will listen to submissions on in the annual plan process.
We tried to cover through recommendation 3.
Yeah.
At the moment, as per the long-term plan, it is a $2 million fund, but we acknowledge that decision's still been made. It was discussed during.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm comfortable that sets out the current position of council, but flags that there are still decisions to be made on whether or not this starts and the final value of the fund. It's up to the table if you choose to amend the recommendation. I'm comfortable that reflects the current position.
I had read that and thought it just talked about the date for implementation, and maybe it should be establishment date for implementation and quantum. But that's, I thank you for that explanation, and I'll make sure that that's noted. Thank you.
Councillor Forbes, your hand was up, but now it's down.
That's what I was discussing, and I'm happy to move.
Okay. Just check there's no more questions. Your seconding, Councillor Somerville. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Forbes?
Yeah, just briefly. We were in Wanaka yesterday with the latest Upper Lakes Integrated Catchment Management meeting. Lloyd was there as well, Lloyd and Councillor McCall, and we're really starting to see that shape up now, and I'm sure we have also in the Catlins, of course, and it's going to be interesting to see it roll out. And to see these priorities emerge, it seems to me that the funding model that we're proposing to start to develop further, and it seems really sensible to be aligned with this catchment management framework, to somehow link it to that. And I just wanted to sort of say that, even though I think that's where we're going, and prioritising funding for those catchment action plans is likely to take us just in the right direction when you see the work that's going into them and the prioritisation that's starting to come out. So I just wanted to add that, and saying and thank you to the team for all of this work. Yesterday's meeting was particularly productive and good, and I think all the work in this is going the right way. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Sunderland.
Thanks. Yeah, it's really good to see the decision making on this moving forward. We started this some time ago and have been working through, had a whole lot of work and a whole lot of discussion and thinking. I think those principles that are laid out there are very sound, and the options that we have to consider further are very helpful for us to get our thinking together and make those final decisions. But looks like a very, very valuable thing this could be for the environment of Otago in the future.
Councillor Malcolm.
Look, I'm really in favour of setting this in motion. Look, at the end of the day, we need to be able to tap into the desire of people throughout Otago and throughout the country to actually enhance our environment. So whatever we set up needs to be able to tap into all those people, but it also needs to tap into the wealth of our community, the wealth of people outside our community, and probably even worldwide. So that tourism aspect of the whole of Otago, we really need to tap into that. So the model we finally end up with has got to be exciting enough for people to want to be part of it, because ratepayers have a limited pocket. So we need to, and we've got a huge job to do that I'm sure, done right, this will start to attract huge investment, but we need to make sure we take time at the start to ensure that mechanism is correct. Well done.
Councillor Callagher.
Oh, thank you. My fear is that the poor ratepayers have been held upside down and shaken until their pockets are totally empty, and are now being stripped of their shirts as well. I want to say yes, that we should move to this next stage and support the recommendation, because we're bedding down the principles. But I'm still concerned that each step further enhances that. This sets in place what will be long-term funding risks to the ORC. We're in a cost of living crisis. We aren't seeing the end of that in the near future. I still think this is not the right time, so I'll be voting against, sorry.
Councillor Noon, then Weir.
Yes, so I'm supportive of this going to the next stage. I just want to emphasise the one point in the principles under B, where it talks about ORC taking leadership, the role of the funding system, but local leadership and action should be driven by the communities. And I think that second part of that particular principle is just so vital, that this would be very much delivered by the on the ground action by locals doing localism, and we know that they do it well, and that we are there in support, but clearly are driven and directed by the local people.
Councillor Weir.
They concur with what's been said by a few councillors before. I think this is shaping up nicely. The principles in the model proposed reflect what we've the broad range of perspectives that have come through in the workshops. I think this is clearly something the community's been asking for through the long-term plan and through these other steps. So excited to see this shaping up. My only tiny concern is in the paper, the lack of the word biodiversity anywhere. So just the just wanting to see, I guess, in the next steps that biodiversity and environmental enhancement is at the forefront of what we're thinking about here, and that wider community picture strengthens that. But yeah, excited to see the shape up. Thank you.
Yep.
Sorry, I just
Listening, but we're just clarifying.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I was just going to make a couple of statements I thought might help with some of the questions in terms
probably
of.
can't in debate. Yeah, sorry.
Oh.
Yeah, no, thanks. Right, we're back into debate, and we got Councillor McCall. Sorry, it's confusing council process sometimes, a little bit formal. Thanks. Yep,
I concur with the comments so far, and I think for me, it's my first point here is I think that the paper really reflects the feeling of the workshops and the committee meeting to get to this stage. I think it's really good that it's been presented in a way that does reflect how those meetings went. At the end of the day, large scale environmental funding may well be, is likely to become a legacy of this triennium. So the setting up of it, so it is like it is like a lead project for us, and it's really good that it's been given the consideration that it deserves to make sure that we set it up properly from the beginning. At the end of the day, I think it's the intention of the council is to have it ongoing, but at whatever level. But to enable that, taking on what Councillor Keller was saying, it can't become a burden on our ratepayers. So it's just so important that we actually look at the bigger picture and develop ways of implementing our visions and principles at multiple levels, both inside and outside within the public and private sectors. So, and I think that the path that the proposal we've got in front of us today provides that opportunity that we can use ways that we can give ourselves time to create structures that will attract and distribute significant levels of financial assistance that will result in making a difference on the ground. So, and it's got to be, the assistance got to come from the whole community, not just one sector of the community. And I think that's a real key, and we're taking our time to set structures up to make that ongoing. So I'm really happy with that, and I'll most definitely support the motion. So well done, and having a paper that's well presented that set out the discussions that we've had.
Councillor Wilson.
I'm happy to support the intent of this paper and to get us to a point where we've got a framework for us to consider grants. The problem is we've also got an annual plan, and I absolutely hear Councillor Callagher's concerns about, and it is a rather unknown word we're being foisted into at the moment on the economic front, that we need to be really aware of. I think there are some things that we have missed out, and that's collaboration from day one, about and our relationships, and putting it down in paper what we could be doing smarter and better as a council and our partners with funding. And we should be exploring those as quickly as possible if we wanted this to happen in the next financial year. Because we're all around this table relatively in the fortunate position. There are many people hurting out there, and this will just be another great cost to them. And yet they won't see much value out of it. And we need to make sure that it's being seen as value for everyone and being equitable. So on that stance, happy to support it at the moment. I look forward to hearing all submissions at annual plan on that, and it is subject to what, and making sure that people are very aware that if they submit on that, that we will be listening for those submissions about people's ability to pay. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else who hasn't spoken? Can't see any hands up. So right of response if you would like, Councillor Forbes.
Yes, please. I just want to pick up on some of these the economic points, which I do take seriously, but we have clear direction from our ratepayers on this. We have incredible engagement in our CAPs, much greater engagement than we do in any of our other consultation areas that I've seen recently. People are seeing the opportunity, and maybe especially the economic opportunity in aligning processes towards shared values and agreed outcomes. In the Upper Lakes area, there is a real desire and a push to establish this direction as part of its tourism offering, and these people see it as an economic investment, and probably one of the cheapest economic investments they can make. As far as I can see now, this is the cheapest and most inexpensive way of investing in our future and enabling a future economy. And so this funding, you know, it's part of a broader vision to create our thriving Otago, and with its focus on environmental outcomes that can support long-term economic resilience. And we have to hold that long-term in our focus. Thank you.
Thank you. Everyone's spoken, and so I'm going to put the motions all in favour. Aye. Against?
No.
No. Would you like that recorded, Councillor Kelleher? Just one to record unless someone's jumping out. Okay, the motion is carried. Thank you. Go. Okay, we're up to 7.2, which is the Waitaki update paper. I'll just have a changeover of presenters here. So this one has been authored by Anita Dorr, and she's just coming forth and just proposing a structure for this one. I'll ask that Anita introduces and speaks about this process. Then we might just offer Kevin as our ORC governance rep on the working group if he wants to say something about the process to date. And then I'd just like to foreshadow some alternative motions as well. Over to you, Anita.
Thank you, Chair. So this paper is just a report back. So in about a year ago, Council agreed to initiate this investigative work with a report back in August, which we did, and some follow-up actions, and then a report back in March, which we have missed by a few days. But this is the report back. In short, where we've got to as a working group is that we all understand the principle of managing a catchment as a whole, but we can't clearly articulate what the challenges are, what it means on the ground, and therefore what solutions might be like. So we have suggested that we do a review of the framework that sits across both regions, so that we can better articulate that and understand whether or not we need to do anything else. It may very well be that that says there is no need to progress further, or let's look at opportunities to how we can make things better. And that's the question that we can't answer. ECAN took this paper to their council late in March. They have supported the Section 35 review. They're doing a broader Section 35 review of more than just the Waitaki, but for ORC it would just be the Waitaki. So that is where the group has landed. Happy to answer any questions. I will just note Councillor Malcolm did the heavy lifting on the engagement. I was out of the country for 6 weeks, so he's got a far better grasp over that than I do.
Thank you, Anita. Councillor Malcolm, did you want to contribute something?
Well, I'd certainly like to add a wee bit to this, and thanks for the report, Anita. And look, the working group has responded to the request from our through local Ranaka, Arawhanua, Wahau, and Moraki. And the concept of one management regime over the whole Waitaki is a really, really good concept. Really good. I suppose what I need to highlight is the key response that I got, and again, I was talking to the ministers, to the main water user groups, and Federated Farmers was another group, and probably the key response, especially from at a ministerial level, was: have we done enough talking to assess what the three Ranaka are actually seeking, and can we accommodate what they are seeking within the current framework? And that was a clear message that we got through it. The more I delved into this issue, and I have a reasonably good understanding of what has happened in the Waitaki catchment over the last 30 odd years, it is an extremely complicated catchment. It's certainly exceptionally culturally significant to our mana whenua. It's got 9 hydro dams. It's highly modified. It supplies numerous communities up and down the river and side to side of the river. There's aquaculture. There's huge recreational parts to it. It's the lifeblood of agriculture, horticulture, and viticulture. And that's why so many people in the community and associated with that community have worked hard over the last 20 years, exceptionally hard over the last 20 years, to set in place a really strong planning environment that exists now. So, and what this whole working group has really highlighted me is the actual need for us to continue to talk, to ensure that everyone is listened to and everyone is able to contribute to the well-being of the Waitaki. And that's certainly where we should be heading.
Thanks, Councillor Malcolm. Now, are there any questions on this paper? Councillor Somerville, then Councillor Weir.
I think it might be a question for Councillor Malcolm. Councillor Malcolm, you talked about the need for us to keep talking about this, and I understand that. Would you see that best done through the Section 35 report or through a different means?
The best way to talk is talk. It's generally with a cup of tea and sit parties down and have a yarn. And so with mana whenua and the stakeholders, some organised hui with defined ideas would sound really, really good as a starting process.
Thanks.
Councillor Weir.
Yeah, I guess my question is just around the Section 32 process for ECAN and what happens if we does the Section 35 review of the Waitaki rely on us choosing to undertake a review as well? How would that work if one of us doesn't, one of us doesn't?
Yeah, so through the chair, as I say, they're doing a wider review of a broader suite of, I think it's their regional plan framework. It might be their RPS framework, I'm not entirely, can't recall. So they're doing it anyway. They just won't necessarily pick up the challenges that sit on our side of the boundary.
Yeah, Councillor Noon.
Got no idea who this question is for, but is it common for a Section 35 to be limited to certain topics? Just Googling the RMA, it talks about Section 35 being used to not only gather further information, but maybe commission reports, etc. So is it common for it to be limited to maybe one or two issues, for example, rather than so widely scoped, looking at the holistic management of the catchment, which is all encompassing?
Through the chair, I can't specifically answer your question. What I can say is Section 35 is a tool that isn't widely used and has never been. There's not necessarily a lot of them. I would actually say this is a narrower scope than a full section. So the work that ECAN's doing is a far broader scope than what we're proposing in terms of ORC's perspective. But the intent of it is to understand how policy provisions are working, so you can make it as narrow or as broad as is appropriate.
Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you. So ECAN are going ahead with in all of Canterbury Section 35 anyway. So if we didn't support, they would still capture what they would do within their boundaries for the Waitaki.
Yes, that's correct.
So it's almost not an issue for they are still going to undertake this at a potentially a different level than what's requested. So then what was detailed in public forum was that there has been quite a process to date, and would it be fair to say that that process, the heavy lifting of that process has been undertaken, and now it's actually starting to embed and has had a relatively short time frame to be seen as functioning well or not functioning well? Where do we sit with that? Because we're only a very small part of the catchment at the lower end.
Sorry, there are quite a few questions and
feel free to answer them all.
That
probably came to a conclusion there too, rather than a whole lot of questions.
yeah, I mean, I guess what I would say is, as a council, you agreed to do this work. This is where the working group's got to. As from a planning point of view, I think there's benefits in doing this, but it's also there's a complex environment out there in the RN space at the moment. So, I think there's no simple answer to this, and there's lots of levers.
Is there a likelihood that we could be then requested, if we approve this one, that other rivers could then be requested for a Section 35 as well?
So through the chair, so we did a section 35 review of the water plan for the land water plan. We're currently doing a section 35 for the coastal plan. So it's a process that we do anyway in terms of developing a plan review. So we've sort of done it.
This has been requested by an external party, hasn't it? Or an
No,
external-
this has been
for-
suggested
Yeah,
by
clarity,
Sarah.
the request that council received was not to undertake section 35, it was to work in partnership with Anawhenau and Renaka and that have an interest along with ECAN to look at opportunities within the Waitaki catchment for holistic management. That was the framing. The working group have recommended the section 35 process as the appropriate way to do that. So your question in terms of could it lead to further requests? Yes, it could. We could get a request from any group at any time to look at the plan framework we have in place. The section 35 piece is the recommendation of the working group in this case. It's not that wasn't a process that was pinpointed as the one to use. So just that clarity around.
And okay, thank you for that. But one more. Do we have clarity on what holistic management actually means? Well, what is actually going to be seen from? Is there a common overall holistic management principle that is sort of striving to be found here that would then apply to other rivers too, or is it? What actually is it?
So the principle we have is that holistic management, so managing the catchment as a whole. This is the only river. Now, I might tell a slight fib. I think there's a small part of a river that we cross over with Southland, but there's not many examples where they cross regional council boundaries. So that is the principle. What the working group haven't done is predetermined if there is a problem that needs solved, what the solution might look like. All we've said is, in principle, it makes sense that you manage the catchment from the top to the bottom.
Councillor Wilson, then McCall.
I look forward to the Local Government Commission application to take over Mackenzie into the Otago region, and that might resolve all these issues. But anyway, the question I've got is that the fact that Canterbury are doing this as part of a bigger review, it wouldn't matter if we didn't do it because their end result may say, actually, we don't want to change anything, in which case we wouldn't want to change anything. And the fact that doing them both reviews at the same time may complicate that discussion. Is it possible that it's best just to leave Canterbury to come up with what they are doing, and they're doing it anyway, and just see? Because if they didn't do a review, we wouldn't, would we?
So they won't review our provision.
No.
So that's the challenge. They will continue to do their work, and they will come up with whatever they've come up with. But it will have a look. I don't know the scope of exactly their big piece of work, so it's hard to understand what they're doing. But they just mentioned that they were doing it anyway, and we could carve off this piece of work in terms of the Waitaki, connect it up, and try to have that joined up story in terms of what it looks like.
So maybe I've just missed something here. So the Waitaki Catchment Water Allocation Regional Plan, as adopted by Canterbury, also has an effect on our plan. We
Must give effect to it.
We have to give effect to it, don't we?
No, that's not, no, but we manage the discharges.
Oh,
The discharges are, in essence, the water takes are
Yes.
managed at one end and the discharges are managed at the other, and we happen to be at that end of the thing. So we don't have to implement it, but land users are affected by decisions that are made in ECAN's territory in terms of resource allocation.
They do the take, we do the use.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor McCall.
Yeah, I think I might have just got answered. Basically, all I was going to ask, just following from the public session around the plan July developing to get to where we are now. So my question basically is the consenting processes following the development of the plan change 3, etc., are the consenting processes and requirements the same on both sides of the river?
No, because Canterbury have their regional plan, their land and water, can't remember what it's called, and we've got our regional plan water, so they're different.
So farmers on either side might have completely different expectations.
Potentially, but I'm not entirely sure whether they joint consent. I don't think they do. Joe's saying no, so potentially, but there's not a lot of take that happens in Otago, because the rivers in Ekan.
So we're more on
We're on
discharge contaminants. Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Weir.
Just to, I don't know, round that off, I guess. So given Ekan is gonna be undergoing the Section 35 review, and that would cover most of the take, as you said. So the concerns we heard earlier from the irrigators are going to arise regardless. Would that be fair to say, whether or not we undergo a Section 35 review, given Ekan is doing it, and that's the section where most of the takes are?
Can I just make a comment there? I think we've got to be careful we don't step into assuming exactly what Canterbury will do. If we choose not to go ahead, the scope and how Environment Canterbury choose to approach their 35 as it relates to the Waitaki is out of our control. So I don't think there's any value in us trying to assume what that process would look like, and would those things that were raised in the public forum materialise through that process. What we'd be doing is effectively, if that is where the decision lands today, is that ORC is not continuing as per the working group, so we would not have a role in that process. We would stay in touch with Ekan through the staff, because we have a relationship with their policy team, and there's obviously shared boundary, but it's not for us to, we would have to wait and see where that went.
Yeah. Any further questions? Okay. Appears that there's no further questions, so I've foreshadowed that I'd like to move some alternative motions, and we'll just ask to have those up on the screen if that's okay. It's hard to see, sorry. Might have to just wait to zoom in on them. And I would like to, they're up there, and I'll seek a seconder, and then I'd like to speak. Yep, Councillor Malcolm, you've got great eyesight. We've talked about that already, and you can read those.
I read that before you
Can
looked it up,
guess
so I'm
it.
comfortable
Fast
to
reader.
second that with your chair. Thank you.
Thank you. I can talk about these, and I can also read them out as I do towards the end, and how I have come to thinking on those. So yeah, just taking a moment to discuss alternative motions there. We do currently have a regulatory framework that involves 4 key pieces of legislation around, regulations around Environment Canterbury plans, Otago Regional Council plans, the Resource Management Waitaki Catchment Amendment Act, and the Ngāi Tahu Claims Settlement Act, which includes provisions that recognise and protect Ngāi Tahu's interest in the Waitaki River. So those are 4 main ones. So yeah, back in March 2024, both regional councils acknowledged a fragmentation and complexity within this catchment, and agreed to explore a more integrated management approach. And that was following a proposal from Ngā Runanga o Waitaki, and also Te Runanga o Ngāi Tahu, I understand. This initiative aimed to manage the river holistically, and we've talked about that already. That just simply means one river, like a catchment, the geographical boundary of that. And look at the opportunities many years of working together actually presents. So we've done a lot of collaboration in that catchment. Are there opportunities that could be built on because of that? It's a sort of a unique environment, and recognising a lot of what people have said already today around that, rather than just the challenges as well, about that complexity that we've talked about. However, recent developments have introduced new variables into this discussion, even since this paper's recommendations from the working group. So Minister Chris Bishop announced further detail regarding the overhaul of the RMA, 2 new bills to replace the RMA by the end of the year. Given this evolving legislative landscape, it's important that we do continue to do our jobs as local government, working with local communities and mana whenua partners and the Crown effectively. All are really important players in the Waitaki catchment. The proposed Section 35 analysis intended to evaluate the effectiveness and efficiency of the system under current legislation. It can't analyse unknown future legislation or management systems. Moreover, stakeholders, particularly landowners and the irrigation company, have expressed concerns about the potential implications of such an analysis on their existing consents and operational certainty. This sits amongst a period of stress and thinking about significant upheaval and uncertainty, and we do have to recognise that setting. I ask, how can local government best serve our partners, our communities, and our environment amidst this uncertainty? Is this a planning review, or is this about harnessing the power of people and collaboration? Bringing people closer together through a chance to talk and discuss the opportunities, not just, but indeed as well as those challenges. Recognising the Waitaki River's profound cultural significance as an indivisible entity is emphasised by mana whenua. It's essential that our approach fosters inclusivity and collaboration. To this end, I do propose that we don't vote with the Section 35 analysis at this point. Instead, we should seek strategic input from the working group. Considering the recent resource management reforms, I recommend that the working group explores the desire and feasibility of convening a hui or huis to engage all stakeholders. This approach would provide an opportunity to share perspective, address concerns, and collaboratively identify pathways forward. An approach I suggest may be more customary for both farmers and rūnaka. Such can still align with the regional initiative already underway through Environment Canterbury's Whole of Region Section 35 analysis. And yeah, as we've spoken about already, that's a matter for ECAN rather than for us to be debating today. So I guess by prioritising the dialogue and relationship building, we can ensure that any future management framework for the Waitaki catchment is both effective and reflective of the diverse interests and values of all stakeholders involved. And just thinking about local government and what we do and what our jobs are, I just think that local leaders deeply connected to our communities are best placed to unite us. That's us, but it's also other leaders that are in the area, that are our partners, that are our communities. And if we can't trust our own people to shape our destiny, who can we trust? So I just think we need to be talking. Yep. And so, yeah, I'd like to move the following up there, simply noting the report, thanking those members of the working group and all the parties that are involved. They're still the working group and have done some amazingly good work. And hey, they may well suggest a Section 35 is certainly the way to go, but I think we need to give them a chance to have a think about strategically what is the best next step, given that there have been some changes recently. And so we're referring that matter back to the working group, number 3, to consider the implications of proposed resource management reform on the Waitaki review process. 4, requests that the working group considers holding, so just considers, it's up to the working group, holding a hui to bring the key parties together to discuss aspirations and opportunities for the Waitaki catchment in light of the RM reform proposals. So that will be around time. They need to have a think about timing as well, but keeping people together would be important. Notes that ECAN have voted to complete a Section 35 review, which is consistent with reviews they're undertaking across Canterbury. Sorry, Elliot, requests that staff provide an update to all parties who've been involved in this project to date on the decision made by ORC and next steps in the process. Thank you. It was seconded by Councillor Malcolm, so I'm going to ask if Councillor Malcolm wants to speak now or reserve it for later on.
I'll hold it for later on, thanks.
Yep, cool. So first up was Councillor McCall, yep, then Councillor Weir.
Just upfront, I just got a request of the mover. I was just wondering whether the mover and seconder would consider recommendation 4 to remove the A before the hui. In recognition that it can often take more than one cup of tea.
Good point, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Right, Councillor Weir, then Councillor Calhoun. Oh, sorry, there's Councillor Laws actually before you, Councillor Calhoun.
A question for the mover if that's allowed.
Yeah, yeah, I'll allow it. It says in standing orders it's for staff, but yep.
Just if we should consider something around the working group reporting back.
Oh, right, yeah, that's a good point. Yep, we could add, yep, the working group reports back.
Yeah, have to move an amendment if that's needed for that. But
I
if the
don't
move's
think so.
happy
If
to
I'm
just
happy
add
with it and the second is happy with it, we can add it to one of them somewhere.
3.
Yeah, it'll be 3. Thanks. Thank you, Councillor Weir. Councillor Laws was next.
Yes, as I understand it, the proposed motions that the chair is moving because we think that this particular item today is premature and that there are such significant changes being flagged by the government to do with resource management reform that really we should wait until those are in more detail, which is ironically the exact reversal of our view when it came to water policy a wee while ago. But it doesn't matter, we've learned from that era. I'm interested though in section 3, which refers the matter back to the working group or recommendation 3 to consider the implications of proposed resource management reform. And I'm not sure that, frankly, that is needed, and I'll explain why. The legislation will be introduced this year. It will then go through a select committee process at which a number of considered submissions will be made all throughout New Zealand. And then ultimately, there will be a final bill or final act passed, presumably next year, after all that deliberation has occurred. I would expect that there would be significant amendments from the time of the first reading of the bill until the final passage of the legislation as a result of public submissions, and given that there is a general goodwill in terms of resource management reform that doesn't appear to be dividing on political lines, there could be significant changes as a result of expert assistance. So can I ask what the purpose of section or recommendation 3 is? Because it would seem to me that the working group would be boxing with blancmange because there is no final resource management acts that are going to be passed by Parliament. And until they are in all their detail, it would seem that the working group couldn't possibly consider them. They'd only be dealing in broad objectives and the sort of the purpose of the Act. Is it the intent therefore for the working group to report back at once the Act has passed so that they can consider the detail of it? Or is it the intent of the working group, I'm asking, that they consider really just the broad outlines at the moment, of which there is very little meat on the skeleton, if a skeleton at all?
Yeah, we're in debate at the moment, so that's what it is, and you're debating.
I understand that, and so I'm asking that. So, as a consequence of that, and asking that question, I'm obviously flagging that I think I couldn't vote for recommendation 3 on the basis that the working group really have nothing to consider. They need to be in a much better position once they have the detail of the legislation and of the acts passed.
Thanks, Councillor Laws. Councillor Wilson's ready. I think Councillor Callagher, you were next though, if you'd like to go. Yep.
Thanks. Yeah, I was hopeful of being able to ask basically that question too. Okay, we're referring the group back to this recommendation is go back whole hui, but we're only midway through where the government is going to arrive at with its changes to the RMA, its changes to freshwater management. So to me, the working group needs to be on hold until we get to a point where we actually fully understand what the changes are going to be, and then continue along the lines suggested here. So yeah, I'm not in a position to be able to support this. I don't think, like I wasn't in a position to be able to support the previous recommendations either, because I'm not sure what it's actually going to achieve.
Thanks, Councillor Callagher. Councillor Wilson.
Look, I'm delighted to see the new amended motion, and I'm happy to support all parts of them. I think this is exactly how you build consensus. The RMA reforms are going to be interesting, and it's a wonderful opportunity, I think, in the process for us as council, who've got quite a lot of experience in the RMA space for unknown reasons, to be doing really strong submissions. And because of the difficulty of a split catchment, having this working group working alongside and putting into us any concerns they may have as they see the reforms coming, and us being able to give some weight behind them would be absolutely useful in my mind. We should be using every opportunity we can to get the reforms that we need into the RMA space and make sure that they are fit for purpose for our diverse and very different region, and especially where we do have 2 catchments at least, which are split across the boundaries. So I have no problems with that submission or that part of the resolution at all. I believe that should we need to do a section 35, this process will empower us to do one very, very cheaply, and enable us to get to that point, whatever the end result from having these hui, but going in with this broad mind as possible about what can be achieved and what might be the issues of the community, and making sure that we do it with them and at their pace, and not just in the statutory de minimis role that the RMA requires us, and often other things are lost in that process.
Councillor Noon, then Weir.
This is one of these times where more hui rather than doing is more appropriate. So I certainly support all the motions. Thank you, Madam Chair and Councillor Malcolm for working on this and having a pathway forward. With regards to 3, I would still support 3 despite what's been said. I think it's important even to note that when this paper was written, you alluded to in your debate, Madam Chair, that we have the RMA moving along a pathway, and we're getting information from time to time. And I would suggest, in 3 months' time or 2 months' time, there will be more commentary, or 6 months' time, there'll be more commentary, and there will be probably more, as Councillor Laws says, flesh on the bones. He's suggesting there's not much flesh there, but there will be more to come. So there will be an opportunity, I think, for that working group to at least try and read the tea leaves on the day and feed that back to us in terms of their view. So I support all the motions that you've moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Weir, next.
Yeah, I was initially skeptical as to, I guess, the concerns around Section 35 review, and I remain a little bit concerned that we won't be as joined up with Environment Canterbury if we don't also do a Section 35 review, or that our side of the river, might be left out of some of their considerations. But ultimately, yeah, we are moving towards resource management reforms. And there are a lot of conversations that need to happen to be able to manage the Waitaki in a much more sensible, more integrated manner. And I think we've shown that we don't necessarily need resource RMA steps to bring those conversations together. I'm thinking about the recent Te Awa Otago report and some of the opportunities that have come through there. And so being able to do something, along those lines on the Waitaki River seems to make a lot of sense to me. Again, yeah, as Andrew said, this may be a time where some more hui before any hui makes sense. To address the points raised about recommendation 3, I think one of the main reasons that central government releases information early on about their plans, and then we have a working group stage and committee stages of bills, is so that we can talk about them in these early stages. And for a catchment like Waitaki, where the management is complicated, it makes sense to talk about it in the early stages of proposed reforms, because something may come up that we need to feed into central government around something that might need to be changed or included in the final legislation. So I think it absolutely makes sense to have these conversations ongoing. And there's going to be other things outside of the resource management reforms around priorities and stuff that we can talk about regardless of what's happening at the central government level. But either way, these conversations, should be happening. So definitely keen for them to go forward and support all of the recommendations as such.
Thank you, Councillor Weir. Councillor McCall.
Yes, no, I'd just like to support what's been said, and especially that we've had the people have gone back and had a big think about it and come back and say, "Oh, perhaps we need to have a bit of a change," and you've given us an alternative pathway. For me, it's always better to talk about stuff, and it's always better to involve your communities, and it's always even better to involve your communities and your local iwi, your local businesses, and your local regulatory areas all in one. Have everybody in the room wherever possible. So I think that gives us that gives you a really positive point to start your communications from, when you're all actually feeling in the room and you're all feeling that you've got the ability to participate in the discussions. Whereas as soon as you start bringing in statutory or regulatory type approaches, it always creates a friction within the room, which at times may not be helpful. I think it is. I think the biggest risk is that the working group goes into hibernation, and that all of a sudden there's the pressure comes off. But I think it's really important that we keep the communication lines open at all times, and hence my desire to have an ability to have several hui rather than just limiting it to one contact. So I think for me, I think it's really important that we all get in together, and I think we all understand having a holistic approach or an all of catchment approach is probably the ultimate that we're all aiming towards. But at times we have to look at the structural, be it structural, physical or structural regulatory environments, particularly in that complicated Waitaki area. It's something you're not going to rush into. It's something that's going to take time to develop the trust and the relationships between all parties to be able to work together as one. And just at the end of the day, the integrated catchment process that our council is taking in the middle of right now is showing it has a real ability to bring people together. And so, given time and keeping the communication lines open, I'm sure the Waitaki area will move in that direction over time at their speed. So I will be supporting all recommendations.
Thanks, Councillor McCall. I think it might be you, Councillor Malcolm.
Are you good?
Everyone else is...
Look, we're exceptionally lucky to have Elizabeth Sol come and shorten my speech by 20 minutes, which, look, I just go back to the motto of Waitaki Boys, which Councillor Noon probably is aware of, but it may have changed since his time, and that was being enriched by the past and being prepared for the future. And it's a motto that I often look at, that before I make any major decisions, I always want to understand the past before I go forward, because often there's so much happened in the past that will reflect the way that I take my first steps forward. This is an exceptionally complicated environment, the Waitaki River. I believe there is actually no need to undertake a Section 35 at this stage. It's quite simply unnecessary. I believe it's an unnecessary intrusion into a very sound planning process. But we do need to drive ongoing dialogue, and that's what I'll support the 6 recommendations. So local Ranaka, Araphanua, Waihao and Maraki, the communities that surround the river, the generators, the water users, the recreators, all who rely on the might of the Waitaki. The dialogue needs to ensure that we continue to work collaboratively. That's a big word, and it means a heck of a lot, but that's been happening for the last 20 years to ensure we're at the space we are now. But clearly, we need to continue and do that better. There is a heck of a lot on the horizon, and I think we really need to relay this back to the working party, because they've been battling with what is in front of us. And there's so many things that are about to influence what will happen in the Waitaki. That is the RMA reform that we're talking about, and there is a special act, the Waitaki Act, that's in, so that will be addressed through this process. There's a national policy statement for freshwater reform, freshwater management. This is an Otago claim at the moment for the status of water in the South Island, and that will certainly have some effect on the Waitaki. And there's a local government reform that potentially could solve all these issues and put it all back into one little nice neat package where it used to be, but that's another wee dream. So I just, the timing is simply wrong to go down that process. No matter what process we end up with on the Waitaki, it is going to be complicated. It is not a lot different to what we're actually trying to achieve now on the Clutha. Now, we are not cutting and pasting the implemented catchment program, the catchment action plans of the Catlins, and putting it up at the top of the river. I'm sure we're not going to do that. And that's exactly the same as the Waitaki, but the Waitaki has there's 9 hydro dams. It's exceptionally modified. It supplies numerous communities. There's everything that I've stated before. There's the aquaculture, there's the recreators, there's the agriculture, viticulture and horticulture that come from it. And all those people have worked so hard for the last 20 years to take a very complex process that had 5,500 odd submissions to make sure the Waitaki was managed correctly, to the stage where we get the Plan Change 3 in 2018, I think was when the ink dried, where none of those groups had opposition to it. So iwi, the generators, the water users, the communities all signed off and were happy to go ahead. And we're now at the stage where the first round of consents in that process are being used. So to me, that will be the real work showing that the process is working well. Let's go do some yapping, and let's really take the initiative, the thoughts of iwi, that there is an opportunity to look at a holistic approach to the whole river. I have no problem with that at all, but let's sit down and see what that actually means to them and what that actually means to all the other stakeholders, and let's draw something together from there. Fully in support of your motion, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Not everyone has spoken, so I'm giving a last chance. No hands up, so I don't need to have a right of reply. I've said what I wanted to say. Councillor Forbes, you're coming into the picture, but your hand isn't up. No, cool. Just always, difficult when you're online sometimes. Right, so they're all there, and we may need to, I'm going to put them all together actually. Put them all together. All in favour? Aye.
Aye.
Against?
No.
Carried. Would you like that recorded?
please.
Yep, councillor Callagher would like that recorded. Anyone else want a no recorded? Possible.
Oh, I've spoken, no, I mean, no, but you don't need to report me. Thanks very much.
Right. Thanks, councillor Laws. The motions have passed. Thank you very much, everyone, for a robust debate there. We are on to 7.3 representation review. Welcome, Amanda. Great to have this result back. And yeah, would you like to introduce?
Sure, I won't say too much other than what we want to do is just record the final outcome from the Local Government Commission's hearing and decision-making process for you to sort of note and receive. And I guess there were the additional comments that the Local Government Commission made about the growing population data and just having in mind to that in 3 years' time to consider whether another rep review is warranted.
Any questions? Should be reasonably straightforward, I think. At the end of a long process.
Happy to move.
Right. Councillor Forbes, did you want to speak to it?
No, the process has been robust. We had the late appeals. Oh, sorry. Here I'm saying no, but yes, I do. The QLDC and DCC, and that's really it came down to where we are at, and I'm very happy. I'm happy enough with where it's at. It's not a perfect solution, but it's the one we've got till at least 27, so that's fine. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
I'm happy to support, and I just wanted to say thank you to the staff and yourself for presenting at the submission. But can I just ask one question? Do we have any idea of the cost of that process, of the appeal process? The appeal process into what specific costs? What did it cost us? I mean, and what the whole process cost? Do we have any idea of what that cost?
The whole review, I think.
No, I mean just the appeal.
Appeals.
No, there was no cost to the Local Government Commission's time.
They don't charge for that.
No, they don't charge for that. They do that through their own, I guess, setup.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, and I appreciate that. It's an interesting process, and I watched some of it online and read the transcript. It's a funny space to be in, and the fact that I think the robustness of the process made it relatively easy to defend. So thank you for all those that had part in it. Thank you.
Councillor Callagher.
Thank you. I found the appeals quite challenging to follow and understand, and I think that what they were almost looking to do was ring fence urban and ring fence rural, and then look to increase the representation for urban and diminish the representation for rural. And it was, to me, far too much segregation across Otago and what the Otago Regional Council is intended to cover, which is more predominantly the rural areas and what happens in the rural areas. Of course, we have a large involvement in what happens in the urban areas, but they are already represented strongly within the municipal councils and our TLAs. So, yeah, I think while I would support that we should keep a close eye on the changing populations in certain areas, yeah, I think our two mayors and the appeals that they took were a little bit presumptuous, a bit early, and a bit unreasonable.
Thank you, I think. Right, we got heaps of hands up. We got councillor, we'll just go around. We've got councillor Malcolm, Nicole, Noon, and then there was some here.
We're in debate, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I just really like to congratulate the DCC for recognising that this Mosgiel Torrey area has been in the Molyneux constituency since 1989. Or have I got that wrong? They still haven't realised that.
Thank you, councillor Nicole.
No, I'm happy to.
Yep. We'll go to councillor Laws and then round the table.
I just wanted to thank the chair, in actual fact, and the staff for promoting the regional council's viewpoint so effectively. Well done. But I want to endorse Councillor Kelleher's comments. The most effective way of Dunedin's argument was just specious. It was essentially, oh God, we're going to lose power to those ingrates up in the Dunstan area, so we can't possibly do that. I mean, it's an absurd argument, and if that's what they're worried about in terms of their numbers, then equally the Representation Commission saw it as absurd as well. I want to also answer to Glyn Lewis, the Mayor of Queenstown, that it's the view that you have to live in an area to serve it, and the only you can know that in the Queenstown area. The irony of that was that he was really so Queenstown centred that Wanaka, which is further from Queenstown than Cromwell, for example, would escape his argument as well. And I just want to again compliment you, Madam Chair, on the erudite way in which you presented the ORC case and the logic, clear as it was, that you refuted those arguments.
Thanks, Councillor Laws. Councillor No.
Yeah, I just want to really start off by saying it just proves why it's so important that you have an independent body dealing with an issue that encourages patch protection. And I'm not going any further than that. So I think we were landed is in a good place. We got what we wanted. I think from an elector's perspective, it's a relatively minor change. I'd like to think also that in a roundabout way we may get a better turnout because, you know, everything is pretty much very similar. I know we've got STB now instead of first past the post. But yeah, a positive outcome would be a better turnout at election time as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Anyone else around this way? Councillor Weir.
Yeah, again, echoing the thanks for everyone involved in the robust process that we've gone through, and thanking the TAs for putting forward their cases. And I don't wish to jump on the pylon, but I do have to comment on the DCC's proposal, because I think it was well intentioned, but I don't know if they realised that the proposal would actually decrease the representation for Dunedin City. It would, you know, keep the Dunedin constituency at 6, but only by losing their constituents in the Molyneux constituency, where they already hold the majority of the population in that constituency, and would increase the total number of councillors to 13. So actually significantly decreasing the overall proportional representation that Dunedin City would receive. So I guess just a suggestion to perhaps think these things through. But I am hopeful that with the change to STV and with these changes, as Councillor Noon said, we could perhaps see some higher turnout, but I think we also need to push for that ourselves in other ways as well. Cool.
No other comments, I don't think. I'll just quickly say as well, everyone in house has already thanked everyone, but I just want to thank our team of councillors as well who came to a unanimous decision on this in the end. And we had our unanimous decision robustly tested by appeals, which is always good. So I really do thank those that got involved in that and gave up their time and brought up some really valid issues that are facing areas of Otago. So yeah, I thank the appealants as well, which added to the robustness of the process. But a massive thanks to Amanda for all the work that you've done, to Stephen Hill as well, who helped us with some independent advice as well throughout, and Richard and the rest of the team as well, for everyone that got involved in this really well, I suppose, put together process. So is there a right of reply? Alexa, that was you. Was it you who moved? Yeah. Oh, you're just muted, Alexa.
Oh, being a mutant's no fun. That was a good process. Thank you to the team, and we got to where we got to in the beginning anyway. So we came around to have come full circle, and it's good to see it tested and come up the right way. Thank you very much.
Hey, we'll put it then. All in favour? Aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you very much. 7.4 is the 6-monthly report to the minister under section 27 of the RMA. We know
Happy to
this
move.
paper, we've had this one regularly, but it's an update.
Happy to move.
Yep, we've got Councillor Wilson who's happy to move when the time comes, and Councillor McCall's happy to second that. But there may be some matters that you'd like to draw to our attention, and if you needed to, go for it. Richard's saying there isn't, Fleur's saying there isn't. So
Can we
can have questions.
highlight the last section? So we don't have to do another report. What is it? Was it somewhere it talks about the requiring one more report? Can we highlight that in yellow? Take the lead that they may suggest we don't need to do
We
another
have
one.
asked, yeah, we've asked to stop them and.
Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, Councillor Malcolm.
Well, just taking the lead from Councillor Wilson, and in paragraph 4, it's just you've got Professor Skelton, is now Sir Peter Skelton.
But he wasn't then.
He was, I know he wasn't then, but if you're referring to him now, I just, yeah.
Good point.
And that was probably a lot of the work that he did on the Waitaki Act, and the 20 years he spent on there helping get that, I suppose.
Thanks, Councillor Malcolm. Any other questions? No. Someone want to move it? Oh, yes, sorry, you did too. Yep, got those recorded. Brilliant. So we'll put that then. All in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much. I think we're done, aren't we? Yep, no other minutes or anything, no. Good one. I won't close with karakia, we'll leave that open for the next committee as well. So that draws us to a conclusion today. Thanks everyone for your participation in an extra council meeting, and to everyone that joined us online, public forum, anyone else that joined us. Thanks heaps. We're done.